The European Union is increasingly evolving into a structure that many observers describe as a kind of modern empire. While some countries support this model, others view it as a threat to their national sovereignty. Hungary is unmistakably among those states that oppose a deepening of centralized powers and advocate for the protection of national decision-making authority. Within the EU's political institutions, a conflict is unfolding that goes far beyond ordinary disputes. At the center are two figures whose confrontation could decisively shape the future of the continent: Viktor Orbán, the Hungarian Prime Minister who consistently resists the influence of Brussels, and Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission and one of the most powerful women in Europe. For months, a strategically planned campaign had been underway in the background, during which von der Leyen used her position to exclude Orbán from crucial negotiations. The goal was to isolate the Hungarian leader and weaken one of the most vocal critics of Brussels' direction. The logic was simple. Without Orbán, the EU could present a united front externally without exposing its internal divisions. The defining moment came when top European politicians were invited to the White House for talks with then U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. All major European heads of state and government were present, except Viktor Orbán. His absence was no oversight, but the result of a deliberate political decision. By excluding him, von der Leyen aimed to reinforce her image of a unified Europe and silence the only leader who consistently challenged her policies. To Brussels, Orbán represents the kind of political leader viewed with deep suspicion, a prime minister who prioritizes national interests over the broader objectives of the EU, who rejects decisions made by unelected officials, and who openly opposes key projects of European integration. Yet the strategy of pushing him to the sidelines failed at critical moments, particularly due to Donald Trump's intervention. While the EU kept Orbán out of high-level talks, Trump decided that upcoming peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine would not be held in Paris, Geneva, or Washington. Instead, he chose Budapest as the venue. This decision sent a geopolitical signal of enormous magnitude. It placed Orbán at the center of international diplomacy, even as the Commission had systematically excluded him. For von der Leyen, it was a serious setback. For Orbán, a political triumph that strengthened his international standing and consolidated his position within Europe. Alongside these diplomatic tensions, a far more serious crisis was unfolding. Multiple attacks targeted the Druzhba pipeline, which transports Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. According to military officials, these attacks were carried out by Ukrainian forces and posed a direct threat to the energy security of both EU member states. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó warned that after each attack, oil supplies might be disrupted for several days, an interruption that would have immediate consequences for households, businesses, and the region's economic stability. The situation was particularly paradoxical. Hungary had even supplied electricity to Ukraine, while Ukrainian forces allegedly attacked the very infrastructure critical to Hungary's survival. As this energy crisis escalated, Orbán delivered one of his most forceful speeches in years to the European Parliament. He accused the Commission of treating Europe not as a union of sovereign states, but as an ideologically driven project that punishes dissent and rewards conformity. Orbán presented a series of documents and data criticizing the distribution of EU funds, pointing to billions flowing into opaque NGOs, cultural programs, and lobbying groups, all financed with taxpayer money and lacking clear democratic legitimacy. Another key element of his critique involved the scandal surrounding deleted messages between Ursula von der Leyen and the Pfizer CEO during vaccine negotiations. The European Court of Justice confirmed that von der Leyen had violated transparency rules, yet the Commission blocked further investigation. To Orbán, the case symbolized a systemic problem: lack of accountability, insufficient transparency, and a political elite shielded from oversight. Over time, internal resistance to von der Leyen also grew. A total of 175 members of parliament from diverse political factions openly opposed her leadership. Even traditionally pro-European parties, liberals and social democrats among them, began to distance themselves. Several member states questioned her competence and judgment. France explored possible successors. Poland and Slovakia blocked new EU funding packages, and criticism even rose within Germany. The combination of diplomatic isolation of certain states, the mishandling of the energy crisis, the failure to ensure transparency in the Pfizer case, and the ongoing conflict with Orban plunged von der Leyen into the most difficult political situation of her tenure. At the heart of Europe's divide, however, lies not merely a series of political decisions, but two fundamentally opposing visions for the future. On one side is the model of a more integrated Europe, where national sovereignty yields to supranational institutions, governed by technocratic bodies that consider themselves more efficient than national governments. On the other side stands the model of a union of sovereign states, championed by leaders like Orban, Giorgia Meloni, and Marine Le Pen. This vision emphasizes democratic legitimacy, national autonomy, and voluntary cooperation, rather than centralized control. The attacks on the Druzhba pipeline illustrate the practical consequences of these divergent approaches. When national interests are subordinated to broader goals, countries like Hungary or Slovakia can be pushed into existential crises, while Brussels focuses on abstract political objectives. But if states are allowed to defend their vital interests without leaving the Union, a different, more flexible political model emerges. Trump's decision to elevate Budapest's role suggests which approach is viewed internationally as more reliable. Partners capable of independent action are often seen as more predictable and responsible than large institutions with slow and opaque decision-making processes. As Europe grapples with internal contradictions, it becomes clear that the debate over the EU's future is not a mere bureaucratic argument, but a fundamental choice about democracy, national rights, and the continent's ability to act on the global stage. In the years ahead, Europe will face a pivotal test, whether it will continue down the path of deeper centralization or whether it will rediscover the foundations on which the Union was originally built. The outcome will determine not only the political architecture of the EU, but also how European nations relate to one another, how they safeguard their interests, and how they present themselves to an increasingly unstable world. At stake is nothing less than the question of what Europe ultimately wants to be: a centralized power bloc or a community of sovereign democracies shaping their shared future by choice, not by compulsion.